The story of Matthew Cooper was subject of the Unity Programme DIY SOS, which was inundated with offers of help and support from tradespeople right across our borough. And I believe it truly encapsulates, when we talk about pride in our community and the civic pride that we have in all those volunteers who gave their time, effort and skills to help the Cooper family from Telford. It's been 2 months since our last meeting, but it's been far from a summer holiday. We continue to fight for fair, legal and transparent future fit process regarding the future of our hospital services. There has been cross-party support on this very important issue. I will speak more about this later in the meeting when we discuss the motion on the planned forthcoming consultation. The summer saw a consultation on the modified local plan aimed at supporting the council's business-winning, business-supporting agenda by directing development to locations that are well served with infrastructure and help and support the growth of our local economy. And this consultation ends tomorrow. Last week we saw the first in a series of Meet the Leader events. A number of people spoke to me in Bridge last week on a number of topics, including the PRH, our Telford at 50 celebrations, pride in our community, investment in roads and super fast broadband. And I thank those members of the public who attended on that occasion. There have been a number of other events coming up to be announced. Speaking of investing in our roads, once again we took advantage of the period in which there was at least traffic on our roads to carry out necessary improvements, including the A41 south of Newport and Holyhead Road. I'm pleased to announce also there's been a great deal of interest in the new Leader and Cabinet Member Young Persons Bursary Scheme. The scheme to promote educational, cultural and sporting excellence in the borough was funded by money saved from the voluntary reductions in Cabinet Members' allowances. From children and young people were invited throughout June and July, and there were 32 successful applicants from a range of backgrounds: sports, music and the arts, to education, training and dance. And those young people are represented right across our borough. We can also announce today that the scheme will run for a second year, with applications opening in the spring of next year. As part of our commitment to being business-winning and business-supporting, we look forward to the meeting with the new operator of the West Midlands Railway Network. The company, West Midlands Trains Limited, will take over the rights and the franchise later this year. We met them before they submitted their bid, which included additional services at Telford's 3 stations, an enhanced Sunday service and plans for improving stations and facilities. We congratulate them on winning their franchise and hope to meet them soon to discuss what more we can do to ensure that our infrastructure in our borough is fit for the 21st century. Cabinet has approved a temporary business rate relief scheme whereby £685,000 of government funding will be distributed directly to local businesses over the next 4 years. This scheme has been designed to provide temporary relief to small and medium-sized local businesses, and it's obviously something we welcome. However, it is only temporary, and we call on the government to ensure this is a permanent scheme and taking forward into the next financial years in the medium to long term. One of our own revenue-generating ventures, New Base, goes from strength to strength. Work has already begun in Newport, our 6th development. Work continues in Maybe and Dawley. When completed, there will be 290 rental homes. There's more to come with plans in St George's, where an application will be submitted in due course for 39 2, 3 and 4 bedroom homes. Speaking to the residents like I do of New Place, they absolutely trust the brand of New Place, and they are recommending to their friends and family. It has also been a feature of the summer. The council has taken over the running of the bike club in Telford Town Park, and we have opened the new and improved fitness suite at Wellington Civic and Leisure Centre. We've also been busy during a number of our events. Our council organised events have brought thousands of people into our borough. 15,000 people came to our Springs of Park event, 10,000 to the Carnival of Giants, and 5,000 to the Kite Festival. Ticket sales are going well for this year's Pantomime Peter Pan here in Open Gate Theatre, and following last year's successful European Christmas market, we look forward to that returning bigger and better this year. This council investing in our civic pride, Mr. Speaker. And it all leads us to a very special year next year, Telford's 50th birthday. Celebrations are well underway, in which thousands of people are already getting involved. Over 5,000 people voted on our preferred logo, while over 1,000 people have told us what they want to see in terms of our legacy and our celebrations. And despite what some critics will say, this is about investing in our community. £2 million, not for a party, but into our community. And just to finish, Mr. Speaker, I call and ask and hope that as many residents groups get involved in our celebrations. We have a fantastic history of the last 50 years, and now it's about building the future over the next 50 years.
Thank you, Sean. Item 6 is the Mayor's announcements.
Right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since our last meeting, I've been busy attending a variety of events on behalf of Telford and Wrekin. Over the past 3 months, I have found that volunteering is an essential part of the provision of groups and organisations who give exceptional service to both individuals and communities across the borough. To highlight the volunteering sector, I was honoured to be present when the Lord Lieutenant of Shropshire gave the Telford and Wrekin Parkinson Support Group the Queen's Award for volunteering. Well-deserved accolade to a wonderful support group. Another group that deserves a mention is TACT, the Telford Aftercare Team, and the recovery conference that took place in Oakengates last week. The conference is both hard-hitting and inspirational, as well as educational. And with TACT's various supportive partners, the conference is now acknowledged to be one of its best and largest of its type in the country. On a personal note, I must thank everybody who supported my walk a couple of weeks ago on behalf of the hospice between Bicton Hospice and Severn Hospice, which has raised in excess of £300. So I am extremely grateful to everyone that has donated and given me the support to do that particular walk. And just to close, there is a reminder that my charity launch is next week. The Wakes in Oakengates, across the way from the theatre, at 6:30 on the 29th of September. And it would be great to see you all there supporting Severn Hospice. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 7 is public questions. Can I, before we study public questions, remind people that the question is on the papers as written. I should be asked in the same sort of text which is there. And there's no debate on it, it's just a straight question and answer. And I call on Nick Gowan, General Board, to read his question.
Thank you very much. 22 authorities have adopted additional licensing to deal with unlicensed HMOs. Given that the Council's own research proves that many of the housing problems around the borough gravitate to HMOs, why has selective licensing been proposed for additional licensing to resolve many problems and issues throughout the whole borough?
In regards to the answer, here you are.
Thank you for your question. I think it's fair to say that right across the piece, council, landlords and tenants have been there are issues and it's only right and responsible that we seek to address those issues. To that end, we put out the idea of selective licensing to consultation 2 months ago because we wanted to get the views of all stakeholders, not just on selective licensing, but in addition we wish to extract alternative ideas, solutions and suggestions. That consultation has not just allowed that to happen, but it has also enabled us to engage in a really constructive and purposeful way with the Landlords Association, and it has allowed time for our officers to look at alternatives and the very best practice from across the region and country. What is essential from this exercise is that we get a model in place which better educates landlords and tenants, offers better accreditation and incentives, builds constructive and purposeful relationships with local and regional landlords and tenants associations, maximises the benefit from our influence in partner organisations such as local RSLs, and enforces robustly core standards of behaviour.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. The next question is from Kelly Davis of Peter Richardson Estates Committee. I understand this question may be answered by the Deputy Speaker. We've got the front of the page. Deputy Leader, sorry.
Thank you. As a letting agent, we have noticed a significant rise in tenant evictions in recent months. This is primarily down to the benefit cap, tax changes, and the potential introduction of selective licensing. How do the council propose to deal with the homelessness issue as it continues to worsen?
Thank you, Kelly. We will continue to monitor the cases approaching our homeless service and looking at the reasons why people are becoming homeless. We will also continue wherever possible to work proactively to prevent residents from becoming homeless in the first instance. We have recently secured funding for 2 additional fixed-term posts within the housing team to focus on preventing homelessness for key groups, such as young people and those affected by domestic violence. Where this is not possible, we will work with other council services and external partners, including private landlords, to identify sustainable properties for homeless clients. We would welcome thoughts and ideas from all our partners on how we can try to tackle these issues collectively.
The third and final question is from Gillian Herbert Jackson.
Thank you. Selective licensing has not received cross-party support. Scrutiny terms of reference state all meetings will be held in public and working group meetings are informal. When will the authority's proposal return to scrutiny, and as policy condition 3, could landlords be co-opted in to supplement knowledge and clarify misunderstandings?
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson, for your question. It's yet to be confirmed when proposal will be returned to scrutiny. I can't be definitive because of the work that clearly still needs to go into developing a policy that is robust and helps achieve the mutual aims of the council, landlords and tenants. What I can say in advance of that is that we're committed to involving landlords through the Wrekin Landlords Association and the appropriate regional landlords association in refining of the proposals in advance of any scrutiny exercise that may take place and prior to any final proposal being brought to this council. This joint working has already been assured through a meeting I held with the Wrekin Landlords Association in August, and which will be followed up regularly over the coming weeks and months. It would be down to members of the relevant scrutiny committee to decide if they want to scrutinise and the best way of scrutinising those final proposals, but I can't imagine a departure from the usual practice of engaging stakeholders.
Thank you. Item 8 is cabinet decisions made since the last meeting of the council. This is Appendix C in the agenda, and it's to receive a report. Councillor Sean Davis, your committee
Yeah, take back to that.
just answer the question. Any question on Councillor Carter? I guess you would.
To be wrong with me not to, wouldn't it, Peter? I just want to start by saying thanks to everybody across the local authorities in Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, Hereford and Worcester, in particular our own council here. I'm talking about cross-party support, so it is important to recognise that for the safety and the future safety of people in this borough, we need to make the PCC understand that what he is proposing is not acceptable. I did go on the radio this morning for the second time. Some people have heard me because I've in the street and commented, and I will be questioning his reasoning further in the meeting next week I have in Worcester. But the question I would ask of everybody here is, have they come across anybody, unlike myself, who is in favour of what the PCC is proposing? Because supposedly he has 61% of the public saying they agree with him. I don't think 61% is talking to, but I've not met anybody yet. So that's one of the questions I will be posing to him. But just let me finally say on this, I hope common sense prevails. That's what we need to, and that the accountability that we are offering to our public as elected representatives wins at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. This session is for question clarification only, really, but it's such an important issue that let you go. I did hear you on the radio this morning, and I thought you were well restrained. Councillor Goodmore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2.1.5 cycling and walking strategy. This strategy has several pages of initiatives, which with only a couple of exemptions are expected to be completed in the short to medium term. Would the Cabinet member please explain why there is no long-term cycling and walking strategy?
And obviously, we have got a short and medium term. This is an ongoing strategy, that we will be looking at. So, the short and medium term are there, and we will continue into a sort of long-term strategy. So just picking up on this, all the work that's been done, I think it's an excellent report that's been put together. But, like I say, it is an ongoing strategy.
Councillor Tim Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question of clarification is also in respect to the cycling and walking strategy. I was very pleased to see this strategy. I understand its main intention is to equip councils so they can apply for grants in the future. So it's outward-looking as well as inward-looking. I read the report that Karen pointed out. It's a substantial document. It's a long document. I recommend it to be read. But in there, and perhaps you could clarify for me, what I couldn't see in respect of the maintenance of existing cycle paths and footways was the budget increase proposed year on year, percentage increase to underpin this strategy. So if you could clarify that for me, the percentage increase year on year budget, and the answer will be a number, please, Cabinet.
Yeah, just to confirm, there's been obviously 1 million in the private community for footpaths. That will be happening, and also £100,000 for rights of way. So there is funding there.
Councillor Steve Bentley.
Thanks, Speaker. A couple of questions, both to the same one. It's a clarification. Is the Cabinet member able to give us an update on the proposed closure of Water Lane? And secondly, on the cycle strategy, does this include any references to the respect towards pedestrians?
Just on the Water Lane one, Councillor, just to let you know, it's out of consultation at the moment. I'm just awaiting the response back from that consultation. Obviously, I will take on board those views, so nothing to report as yet. In terms of what was the other question, sorry, on...
The other question was, does that cycle and walking strategy actually include any references to respect in regards to cyclists towards pedestrians?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't have a microphone, but I'll speak louder for you. With regard to the walking strategy and its ongoing amendments and requirements, would the Cabinet member advise me whether he'll be looking at the timing of the lights to allow pedestrians across the road? Because the time at the moment is not very long, and I believe it's based on a very old set of information from America and has never been refined. And I must admit, as I'm getting older with my increasing frailty, I have difficulty crossing the road when the little man is on green.
I'm sorry to hear that, as you mentioned. Just to let you know, obviously we've got new LED lights. They are new active lights, but we want to be taken on board. If anyone has got concern about lights and not being please get in touch with me. I'm happy to look at it.
Any further questions? No? We move on then. Item 9, recommendation from Cabinet. This is the Telford land deal, essentially. Sorry. Yeah, change capital program, debt finance and management. Councillor Carter.
I'd like to move recommendations, please, Speaker.
Second for that. Any debate? Any debate on the financial management? No, debate, no. Move to second, agreed? All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? We know back on the Telford land deal. It's the one I last time. Councillor Lee Carter, I understand is going to move this one.
I'd like to move recommendations, please.
Councillor Sean Davis to second.
Seconded, reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Carter, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to say, and I've said it before, I welcome this Telford land deal, particularly in respect of the innovation park, which is going to be coming to Newport at some stage. What I would ask the Cabinet member, I have spoken to one of the senior officers today, that the regeneration partnership, which has worked very, very closely with the council over a number of years in Newport and with Harvard University, that the next meeting, I think it's on the 5th of December, that we would welcome the Cabinet member. I think it may be Councillor Lee Carter who's responsible now, taking over from Julie Randalls, to come along to us, as well as senior officers, and give us an update on where we are with this innovation park, which is very, very much wanted in the town for the jobs we will create. And I do hope that invitation is accepted. Thank you.
Any further debate? Bill Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I fully welcome the bill that we have. It shows what a business orientation authority we are, where we can effectively act as the part as estate agents and partial developers of this land, bringing on the benefit to the borough as a whole. My only plea is there's understanding that there are sensitivities around individual deals, but as soon as those deals pass that, shall we say, sensitive stage where they can be more out in the open, but there's more councillors who have parcels of land and where the proposals do become concrete and can be talked about, can be told as soon as possible so they can let their residents know. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further points? No? Sure, Councillor Carter, then to answer the points again raised.
A couple of points there. I think the answer to Councillor Carter's question is yes, of course. I think you can see that they're happy to engage. Really important to engage with partners and stakeholders in Newport. The town council is extremely important also. And I'm pleased that you welcome the innovation part. That's a great development. Of course, part of that was funded through our £50 million growth deal also. In terms of Councillor Tomlinson's points, yes, of course, happy to work with more members once they all over the line. Because it's important for us to actually our residents know and that they see not only the effort and work that the council's gone into, but understand the benefits that we're bringing to Telford.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, on page P60, it says under James and BRJ, but that I presume that means new charter school?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Recommendation I assume be moved. And the second, it's moved secondly. Those in favour of the recommendation? Anybody against? Thank you. Agreed, carried. Item 10, any questions from members? We have one question for the Councillor Lee Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is for Councillor Angela McClellan, Cabinet Member for Transport, Infrastructure and Programme. As Newport is now getting more and more housing developments built, which will result in a lot more daily traffic with parking needs, have the council any plans either now or in the near future to improve the road infrastructure in and around the town and crucially expand the current Telford and Wrekin public car parks or provide any new car parks?
So thank you for your question, Councillor Scott. As you know, Telford and Wrekin Council has been working closely with Newport Town Council and the Community Safety Partnership for a number of years with regards to the parking and traffic issues within Newport. The council has been successful in securing 6.3 million from the Marty's Left to assist in delivering the Newport Innovation Park and wider housing and employment growth. This package includes highway improvements to provide sufficient capacity on the A518 and A41, but also includes £300,000 for town centre improvements to help reduce the impact of growth. The workshop in conjunction with the Town Council includes proposals such as reviewing issues in relation to school parking, reducing speed limits, addressing accident or speeding concerns through a range of measures and preventing issues of traffic, particularly HGVs using unsuitable routes. And subject to agreement by the Community Safety Partnership, the Council will then engage in a wider public consultation before delivery towards the end of 17-18 and 18-19. This work follows on from significant investment within Newport, which includes £730,000 into improving the conditions of highways and footways in the Newport area. We've also delivered an improved layout on the Stafford Street car park to maximise space, along with additional cycle parking in the town centre. Now, on the issue of car parks, the council did work on proposals with the town council to provide short stay parking in Stafford Street and New Street car parks. However, following consultation, there was insufficient public support at that time for these measures. I am, however, always open to look at new ideas and solutions for providing car parking spaces in our town centres, and we'll be happy to meet with yourself again to discuss these proposals, which could include perhaps looking at the Wellington model, which recently had ticket machines installed and now provides an improved system for managing enforcement and has provided a regular turnover of spaces. So I hope that covers the question, Councillor Scott. And as I say, I'm happy to meet with yourself in relation to finding possible solutions.
Thank you. Yeah, I will look forward to that meeting. I think there is some scope to look at that model again, and it would be helpful if I could take something back to discuss with Newport Town Council on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No further questions. We now come to the notice of motion. It's item 11. Councillor Sean Davies proposed
the motion. Do you want to read it out, Speaker?
if you want to.
Not really. Do you want to do for the benefit The Council is disappointed by the decision of the CCGs to select the third option of the Emergency Centre and the Women's and Children's Centre at Shrewsbury to go out to consultation. This will see a downgrading of our A&E departments at the PRH to an urgent care centre. It would also move the current consultant-led inpatient services available at the state-of-the-art Women's and Children's Centre in Telford to Shrewsbury. The Council opposes the selection of this as a preferred option, as it makes no sense to move the Women's and Children's Centre. It was built 3 years ago at a cost of £28 million, precisely because SAP identified a clinical need for Telford. That clinical need has not changed and will not change in the future. The preferred option is also the most costly and could limit further investment into community health services, keeping care closer to home and people out of hospital for as long as possible. Furthermore, this option causes the most disruption, with over 38,000 more journeys for patients living across Telford and Wrekin, Shropshire, Mid Wales being affected under the preferred option compared to the alternative. The alternative is citing the emergency centre at the Women's and Children's Centre in Telford. In light of this, Telford and Wrekin is clear that its preferred option is both the emergency centre and the existing Women's and Children's Centre located at the PRH. Mr. Speaker, I propose the motion. Firstly, let me just say that whatever happens as a result of this future fix shambles, it is the worst of both worlds for everybody. It's bad for the people of Telford and Wrekin. It's bad to the people of Shrewsbury, Shropshire and Mid Wales. Having one A&E, one full operational A&E for the whole of this area, it simply is not good enough. The Women's and Children's Unit being downgraded to effectively a midwife-led unit, which we had at the Wrekin Hospital many years ago, is bad for Telford and Wrekin and the east side of Shropshire. And despite what some people try and make this is not a Telford versus Shrewsbury argument. This is about fairness. This is about fairness and funding and resources to our NHS that we, the Labour Party, set up. And the reality is that this government, who cancelled and downgraded training places in 2010 when they first took office, we are now seeing the results of that decision. Less consultants, less GPs, harder to get a GP appointment, harder to access healthcare. And the reality is, Mr. Speaker, this is a Conservative crisis in the making here in Shropshire. And there are no winners. There are no winners to this. However, we as a council are being backed into a corner to make a decision, and we will always put the interests of Telford and Wrekin at the heart of our decisions. And I've been very clear on behalf of this administration, on behalf of this council, with cross-party support, that the Women's and Children's Unit is our red line. The Women's and Children Centre, consultant-led centre, opened 3 years ago at the cost of £28 million, has to stay in Telford. It's because that's where the clinical need is, Mr. Speaker, and every stat that you see will prove that to you time and time again. And I've heard some people who are meant to be standing up for the interests of Telford and Wrekin, saying nothing to see here, no downgrade here, no closure here. Well, the simple point of the matter, Mr. Speaker, is if that is the case, then why on earth is there a consultation? A consultation to downgrade our Women's and Children's Unit, to downgrade our A&E, to give Telford second best. And I'm not in the business, Mr. Speaker, of accepting second best for Telford and Wrekin, and indeed the wider part of Shropshire. And I went onto the PRH for Me campaign website, Mr. Speaker, where we've got over 33,000 people, the biggest ever council-backed petition ever in this council's history. And I read some of the comments. Julie from Telford. I remember the days when we had the old Wrekin Hospital. I remember what it could not do for me. This week, my daughter was cared for and her baby was delivered at the Women's and Children's Unit using a consultant-led. The reality is, some so-called representatives of Telford may not want to hear this, Mr. Speaker, but the consultant-led care will leave Telford under these plans, and therefore, if you have a consultant-led birth currently, you will not have that in Telford if this preferred option is implemented. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of examples. Claire from Hollinswood talking about the fact that her son required the services of the PRH, and Charlie was brought to the PRH since his discharge in September 2014. He spent time as an inpatient at the children's ward. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, overnight care for our young children currently being delivered at Telford will be moved down to Shrewsbury. The youngest part of this county, Telford and Wrekin and the east side here, will not be cared for as a result of these preferred options. And Mr. Speaker, David from Telford also writes, he worked at the ambulance service before and after the PRH was opened. Travelling to Shrewsbury was a nightmare before the PRH was open. I'm sure that many patients suffered because of this. We've had several patients die before reaching Copthorne Hospital. I cannot imagine the fire service only having one fire station covering this area, Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin and Powers. And that's the point, Mr. Speaker. We, Telford and Wrekin residents, Telford and Wrekin businesses, and indeed Shropshire and Mid Wales people deserve better than this. And the Health Secretary and the other 4 Conservative MPs have to make the case for better resources, better funding, better care for our people, Mr. Speaker. And the reality is that if DUP MPs can get £1 billion out of this weak Conservative government, then why on earth are our Conservative MPs standing up for the NHS here in Shropshire, Mr. Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Preferred option in the consultation mention could see Telford and Wrekin residents and those of the east of the county lose their emergency provision and their fabulous 28 million women's and children's centre. This is the economics of the madhouse and slaps in the face of the clinical arguments that got the facility located in Telford in the first place. Telford and Wrekin has the county's greatest concentration of people, the high proportion of women and children, particularly those from deprived populations. It is these people from this borough and East Shropshire who stand to lose out the most. The clinical arguments for citing this centre in Telford have not changed. There will be an increase of journey times for over 4,000 journeys for children to hospital every year, plus an increase of journey time for over 1,100 journeys for pregnant women to have their babies in an obstetric unit. On the other side of the coin, by citing planned care in Telford, it would mean 25,000 people in rural Shropshire and Powys being expected to travel to Telford rather than their local hospital. A preferred option that impacts on all three communities, as the leader has said, but not in a positive way. The idea of residents being treated close to home merely a soundbite. If they had, as they should have, reviewed community care first and invested in more patients being seen locally and in their own communities, which we all know is the best place for people to be treated, then the need for access to hospitals would have been reduced, and the needs of our hospital services and what hospital services look like in the future would have changed dramatically. Future Fit has not future-proofed anything. It has merely tried to keep staff happy and support them in their preferred option. In a time of money being tight, the Joint Committee decided to support the most financially expensive option. Again, this makes no sense. We all know developing the POH would take less time and cost less, and that surely means the arguments for a quicker solution to enable recruitment and retention of staff should favour the PRH as well as make more money available for community services, which we all know are valuably needed. This council will always put the interests of our residents first. That is what we are elected to do, and that is why this motion supports the provision of these major services at the PRH. Although sadly it shows that the Conservative Health Secretary's words that we retain both A&E services were not worth the paper they were written in or on, the Shropshire Star, and were merely an election gimmick because he has failed to intervene at every request. I ask today that we come together united on fighting for our hospital and not play the games of what we have seen in this chamber before by the Tory opposition, of voting for a motion but in their speeches confusing everyone by attacking this administration, who have always fought hard to protect our hospital, as over 33,000 signatures to our PRH for Me campaign shows.
Thank you, Speaker. I've been following this debate since the late 70s, I think, when we made the case for a hospital. We wanted a case for a hospital when Telford was a small, growing new town. We, as our Deputy Leader said, are elected to serve the service and serve the needs of our residents. The CCG is appointed to provide services for our residents. However, they have capitulated to their masters. The MPs for Telford and Wrekin have hardly spoken up, possibly because they're the junior members in the Conservative hierarchy in the wider county of Shropshire. I say that the CCG is not fit for purpose. It should be disbanded and brought under elected control, our control. SAF should be disbanded, these are my personal views, and PRH should be shown how to manage staffing and resources, because it is my understanding and my view that they are deliberately running down their services in order to satisfy their own needs. CCG clinicians want to work in the ancient town of Shrewsbury, whereas they should be seeking to work in the growing, vibrant city of Telford. I call upon the CCG and all those concerned in making this decision to look to the needs of the residents of Telford and Wrekin, and even somewhat further beyond, who draw down from our services. This is about our towns, our borough, getting the proper services for our people, not Shrewsbury. Thank you.
The list of speakers waiting. Moving the order over. Thank you, Steve.
Mr. Speaker, for the fifth time in less than a year, we are debating a motion on future fit, which once again is going to get us absolutely nowhere. Why are we still doing this? At least you now seem to have accepted, or at least I thought you had from your motion, but not from the leader's speech, that the status quo is not an option, and a single emergency centre is now going to be sited at either the RSH or the PRH. I agree wholeheartedly that from our point of view, the PRH is the logical option. This will mean the retention in this area of brand new Women and Children's Centre, which was based here after much prolonged argument on proven clinical and democratic grounds. I believe there is still an argument to be made in respect of this, but it now needs to be done later in the process. In the short term, we have to accept that on a numbers game, Telford is in the minority. The public consultation is almost certain to indicate that the rest of Shropshire, and particularly Powys, will prefer the current preferred option, unless they wake up to the fact that for all planned care, they would then have to travel all the way to Telford. On balance, there would likely be far more people travelling to Telford for the planned procedures than going the other way by Green Light to Shrewsbury. From Telford's point of view, because of the higher levels of deprivation in the borough, it could also be advantageous to have planned care here. But, as you have at last seemed to have recognised, or thought so, we can't have both. As is becoming frighteningly clear, especially in view of the recent press coverage, South is finding it increasingly difficult to provide adequate and safe services at either RSH or PRH because of an inability, due to the current two-site situation, to attract the right numbers of the best qualified staff. Unless we want to face the very real prospect of either losing more and more services out of county or having South taken over by an outside foundation trust, we now need to allow the future fit process to proceed. We need to stop threatening judicial action and, from now on, take a full and active part in the process. We need to critically examine the business case in minute detail and the timescales for delivery. Not only is the preferred option by all accounts the most costly, but it is also going to take the longest to deliver. These are the questions which NHS England need to answer, and if they don't, then will be the time for our Health Overview Scrutiny Committee to refer the matter to the Secretary of State. Enough time has been lost. Let's get on with it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I speak in support of this motion. But I would like to say to Councillor Overton that actually opposition is our job, so we propose to do it. Here goes. And so, while I support the motion, I'm bound to say at last the administration sees sense, clearly highlighted in bold in the motion. Saying I told you so gives no pleasure when the delay before sense dawns has been so damaging. I have said to this chamber, and this side of the chamber has stuck to its guns since the beginning of Future Fit, one consultant-led accident emergency service, combined with consultant-led women and children's service at the point of greatest need in Telford. At last, the administration wake up. It is shameful how the opportunity to fight for the people of Telford was wasted in senseless delay and under the radar campaign. Was someone given verbal assurances that everything would be all right? A verbal contract is not worth the paper it's written on. Naivety. Then the crazy pursuit of two consultant-led A&Es in the teeth of professional opinion and the plain evidence of the professionals themselves. It's not a question of money, they just won't work in two A&Es. It is not a question of money. This belated campaign the administration has at last fired into action has now been poisoned by the introduction of politics, pining on about the two MPs, rescuers,
And indeed this evening, our own leader, again saying Conservative MPs, and yet claiming a cross-party campaign. You can't do both. Internal moaning about cuts. Instead of a call to unity across the borough and the county, we have a call to unison. Public sector unions may be deep, wonderful, warm-hearted organisations. I don't know. I have no evidence. But their plain and sole duty is to their members, not residents. But not attempt to poison the debate with politicisation. The administration has then poisoned the debate with the healthcare professionals themselves. Heavy-handed threats of judicial review and appeals to the Secretary of State. You do not make threats of negotiation unless you have a very strong hand indeed. Experience. Who has the responsibility for this litany of failure? One person. He has the honour of leading this council. Things go well and great, but when things fail, he needs calling out. He is being called out. Stop making the mistakes of arrogance and youth. Stop playing to your narrow corners of the party. Getting narrow, I imagine. Learn some maturity, step back and speak for everyone, explore all options. Start doing your job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by expressing my sincere disappointment in the decision of both Telford and Shropshire CCGs to unanimously support the preferred option, which would see the emergency site based at the RSH. The health inequalities between Telford and Shropshire are substantial, and we have one of the fastest growing populations in the UK. The factual evidence that secured the women and children's units in Telford is even more relevant today, evidencing why the emergency care centre should be located at the PRH in Telford. We are shortly to move to a stage of public consultation, and it is imperative that we make it explicitly clear to our communities what is being considered and proposed. I am therefore encouraged to see that this motion from the administration has finally begun to use the correct language with reference to what is actually being proposed at the Women's and Children's Centre. As under any scenario, 7 out of 10 women and children's episodes of care would still be delivered locally, with specialist emergency paediatric care taking advantage of the greater depth of expertise alongside the emergency centre. I was delighted to see our MP for Telford, Lucy Allen, move a debate in Westminster Hall on the future of services at Princess Royal Hospital. This debate in Westminster reiterated what I, and I know my colleagues, have maintained throughout this process, that when we discuss the future of our local health services, there should be a real dialogue with the community based on clear proposals and facts to avoid speculation. The Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Health, Jackie Dawn-Price, said in response to the concerns raised by our local MPs in the debate, it is not the job of anybody in local leadership to foment fear. The whole purpose of how we structure the NHS now is that communities are empowered to make decisions. That is why it is all the more irresponsible for the council to be engaged in this speculation. I personally believe, Mr. Speaker, we are extremely blessed to live in a mature democracy. We are where we should be able to have debates and discussions based on mutual respect and facts. Most disappointingly, the debate on healthcare has become highly politicised in Telford Wrekin. However, I hope this evening that every member within this chamber can at least agree that we have the best interests of our communities at heart to secure them the very best care. Therefore, whilst I greatly support the sentiment of the motion, this council needs to take responsibility for its actions. Instead of focusing on a campaign and investing taxpayers' money in a campaign that has done little to clarify the proposals and will carry limited weight in informing the decision-making process, it should focus its efforts on informing the public of what services are being proposed at both sites, and urge everybody to fully participate in the consultation. Our communities, Mr. Speaker, need to have its say and inform the decision-making process, and they deserve to know exactly what is being proposed on this most important of issues to shape the future of our healthcare provision in Shropshire.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, it's important that the Council administration has a clear, consistent, balanced and credible vision and stance with regard to the future delivery of healthcare in the borough, and of course that's Shropshire as a whole. This clear and consistent vision is missing, and I found it incredible that we're facing a third and different strategy for this administration to try and deliver. First, we had an Under the Radar campaign, the launch of which Councillor Tomlinson and I attended in the Leader's office. A campaign which quickly proved to be a naive and disastrous choice. Secondly, the current council leader championed the Let's Have a Consultant-led critical care centre at both Shrewsbury and Telford hospitals, despite the absolute fact that as consultants would not work with two such small units, they would have been proved impossible to staff. What part of that don't you understand? And now, lastly, we've shifted ground yet again to propose the stance adopted by my group many months ago, that as the new £28 million women's children's unit is placed at the PRH due to clinical need, the single consultant-led critical care centre should be placed at Telford. Why on earth did you not accept what we were saying 6 months ago? Agree with us and go forward together. Heaven knows it was reiterated here in full council on many occasions. As a direct result of this Labour administration's conduct, actions and threats, we've lost the vital support of the Telford and Wrekin CCG and are left alone trying to work and negotiate in a poisoned and unproductive atmosphere. Although the last Conservative administration fought and won this battle back in 2010, it was made perfectly clear that as consultants retired, their replacement would be very difficult due to the small size of the units, with limited opportunities for them to gain experience and consequently heavy rotas to work. Now, this simply wasn't an attractive option for consultants at that stage. Bearing that in mind, what on earth has been going on with staff in this council that we find ourselves 7 years on and no further forward? Indeed, our hospital services in Telford and Wrekin are in a very parlous state as a result. The leader of this council made the hospital its #1 issue to fight for and deliver. It was absolutely right to do that, but the way that this campaign has been fought has been an unmitigated disaster. However, as the council leader has at last apparently agreed with our long-stated position, we will naturally be supporting this motion. However, I fear it is too little, too late, and we probably missed the boat. I want the best possible healthcare for the borough and county, but under the prevailing conditions, this seems as far away as ever. Where is the vision of this council? Other than tub thumping, table thumping, threatening people, why on earth isn't there a strategy that we could all see, we could all benefit from, that would actually save the health position in this county? You've put us all at a parlous state. You've delayed the process and for no particular end. As I say, we've actually lost the support of many partners in the process. This has been an unmitigated disaster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's lots in this motion I agree with. The wording of this motion looks to have been very carefully chosen, acknowledging that reconfiguration of hospital services will take place. This is a seismic shift for this Labour administration, which up till now has pursued an unrealistic, unsustainable and clinically unacceptable hospital model where no services will be moved from the PRH. They were never going to build a new Stoke or Heartlands at Acton. In every feasible reconfiguration scenario, some services will move from the PRH. So at best it was disingenuous and at worst misleading to guide well-meaning and rightly concerned residents down this reconfiguration cul-de-sac. It may be advantageous to an individual member's position to play to the gallery with respect to the union's momentum, Corbynistas et al. But remember who you were elected to represent. Mr. Speaker, now this administration has seen the light, finally. We've been banging on about it for and embraced our position on this issue. The next step is to work with and support our MPs. After the parliamentary debate at Westminster, where both Mark Pritchard and Lucy Allen spoke passionately in support of the PRH, the silence was deafening for members of this administration, and even tonight they still have a pot happening. Now I know humility is not a strong trait on the other side of this chamber. However, I suggest you try it and maybe surprise with the results. Mr. Speaker, it's taken a lot of time and money, council taxpayers' money to get to this point, and there's still a long way to go, with unexplored alternatives to be investigated. Whatever the results, services at both Telford and Shrewsbury will change. If the critical care centre is at Telford, then 80% of people who use both hospitals will go to Shrewsbury for planned operations and procedures. If the critical care centre is at Shrewsbury, then 80% of people who use both hospitals will come to Telford for planned operations and procedures. A fact that's beginning to dawn on those who support the preferred option or live in Wales. Everyone here supports the critical care centre being based at PRH for the reasons that's already been given. Mr. Speaker, regardless of the location, the important thing to remember is that clinical outcomes will be vastly improved. The recruitment crisis resolved, and the people of Telford and Wrekin will have the 21st century healthcare that they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support this motion and all the points that have been made by the leader and the deputy leader. I support them. But I just wanted to make just one point, Mr. Speaker, and this is just a food for a thought. Back in 1980s, 86, 87, 89, when our PRH was sanctioned, and my colleague, Councillor Arnold England, is always talking about it, and he was involved in that through the union, and I think everyone's aware of it. In the mid-90s, when the hospital, PRH, was sanctioned to be built, the population of Telford and Wrekin was about 133,000 at that moment. 133,000. And then when it was opened in 1989, it was fully functional general hospital, including 24/7 A&E, and then it carried on for the next 30 years or so. And now for the next 10 years or so, at the moment, the population of Telford and Wrekin is about 170-something thousand. And then in the next 10 years or so, it's likely to be around about 200,000. And if my calculation is right. Now, someone out there, when serving the health care of Telford and Wrekin, has not been calculating the population right. 200,000 or so in the next 10 years, our hospital is being downgraded. 24/7 A&E is being downgraded. Our women and children department is being downgraded. And this is what's been happening out there, and this is why I support our local hospital, and this is why I don't want the local hospital to be downgraded, and therefore I support this motion. Thank you.
Yes, Mr.
Mr. Speaker. When this erupted a while ago, I remember being in hospital with a sister in Shrewsbury, and all the patients that were in Shrewsbury, a good proportion of them had came from Paris. And what struck me at that time was how passionate these people were to not only keep the services at the Royal Shrewsbury, but we would gladly come over and come on the barricade with you to save the PRH. I agreed with the public, the stance that we took here as a council to support initially the two A&Es of both hospitals. I am not convinced, and I know the practical issues, and I agree with eloquently said about consultants won't work in small units, but with future fit, or does one fit it all. We have large areas of rural communities in Shropshire and on the neighbouring hills of Paris. And there's an aim of suggesting rural communities' populations are spread. The gist is that wherever you place hospitals, it takes an awful long time if you live in a rural area to get to them. Surely, can't we press the point that consultants who like to live and work in large hospitals because they can specialise, fine and dandy. But what about all those poor patients that are having to get to these A&Es so they can have their preferred option and living in a nice consultancy area? I am still not convinced that one size fits all. And I think the public would have seen it remiss of us to not fight for the services for both of those hospitals, and not to just stick for what the consultants believe is what's best for us. We owe them that. If, however, this can't work and the consultants simply can't be attracted in, then yes, I would fervently agree that it should be centred on the principle. It's got the children's unit, which is clinically private, should be there. It could have the emergency centre put there, and it should have the trauma area put there as well. And I think it was alluded to by the West Midlands NHS. It's also the cheapest option, so it should be based there. But my heart really goes out for those people that live in far-flung places. If it's going to be the same here, what about in other rural areas? Is it going to just have one hospital? Are we going to see the clouds littered with bloody helicopters coming in left, right and centre? Because that's the only way we can save people's lives. Because that's what it will come to. Anyway, I should still think we should campaign based on the Queen's control, but I'm deeply disappointed that we can't retain the service to both hospitals. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw needs to reply to any debate.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Nobody against it.
Yes, indeed. I'd like to pick up a few comments. First of all, Mr. Speaker, this may very well be the fourth or fifth time, as Stratford Seymour says, this issue's come to this council, but this is an imperative and important issue to the residents of our borough, and 33,000 people have signed the petition on the PRHME website. Over 1,000 people stood up to the march. Not one single member of the shadow cabinet was on the march in Wellington just before the general election. Actions speak louder than words, Mr. Speaker. And the reality is that underneath the radar.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. I was certain that I'm a member of the shadow cabinet and I was in that march. I've got photographs to prove it. Yes, sir. With Councillor Hoskin as well.
You made a point there.
I was going to say,
I know Councillor Barnes there because I walk alongside. We talk about it.
Mr. Speaker, let me rephrase it a different way then. We received representations from the leadership of that group that the march was a waste of time, and that's a matter of public record, Mr. Speaker. And the underneath the radar campaign that the leader of the opposition talks about has certainly got the attention of our 5 MPs, Mr. Speaker. In the Westminster Hall debate, Lucy Allen begged the Health Secretary to intervene, begging the Minister to intervene. And Mr. Speaker, like on many other issues, this government simply turned the other cheek and didn't listen to our MP, which is a crying shame. So I agree with her. The Health Secretary must intervene immediately. In regards to the judicial review, Mr. Speaker, every member of the Chamber voted in favour of the motion to take judicial review. If appropriate, they're trying to rewrite history, Mr. Speaker. And the reality is that many people out there take the view that this group of Conservatives would rather grab the headlines than be constructive. There is 5 Conservative MPs, there's a Conservative Health Secretary, there's a Conservative government, but somehow they want the public to believe that it's the Labour Council's responsibility that the hospital's being downgraded. They weren't born yesterday, Mr. Speaker. They know where the responsibilities lie. And the reality is, Mr. Speaker, that we, the council, should be sending a united, single voice to the government. This is not good enough, and we deserve better as a borough, as a county, and as a region, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, the motion is before you. All those in favour, please show. Anybody against? Any abstentions? That's clearly unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Ball, going through the next motion.
In the spring of 2011, there were many reasons to be excited about the future of secondary education within Telford and Wrekin. The council had secured over £130 million of grant funding from the coalition government for its Building Schools for the Future programme. The Conservative administration had announced a feeding school was to be rebuilt and confirmed its aspiration to rebuild rather than remodel the remaining secondary schools in the borough, while the Cabinet had approved plans for the establishment of a university technical college in the south of the borough. Telford and Wrekin was looking forward to a secondary school estate fit for the 21st century, combining academic and vocational establishments worthy of the aspirations of our young people, including those with special needs and the wider community for decades to come. This was a golden legacy inherited by the incoming Labour administration in May 2011, one which has been squandered in the most unforgivable manner, leaving us to the disastrous position where the council's annual school capacity statutory return predicts a shortfall of 197 secondary school places in the borough, a mere 12 months on from the final closure of its Building Schools for the Future programme, and goes on to forecast an eye-watering shortfall of 1,889 secondary school places by 2022, only 5 short years away, a very highly uncertain future for the provision of education for young people who have special needs. These numbers are not a matter of opinion, but come from papers published by this administration. This council has the statutory duty to provide sufficient primary and secondary school places to meet demand, and has yet spent over £200 million on a revised PSF programme devised by this Labour administration that removed our much-needed university technical college, reduced the overall number of secondary places available in the borough, just at the time when an upcoming increase in demand was demonstrably evident in pupil numbers going through the primary phase, in addition to an entirely predictable increase in demand for secondary places as a result of this administration's plan to build over 12,000 new homes in the borough. According to its published numbers, this administration will be overseeing a demand for almost 1,900 secondary school places within 5 short years, and a shortfall in special needs places that it presently has no published or funded contingency to provide for. How can Telford and Wrekin win business if it is not capable of providing skills and education for its young people that business both demands and requires? How can Telford and Wrekin hope to attract the driven and aspirational individuals that are vital to our future success if it has no strategy to provide the academic and vocational spaces for our younger generation and those that will follow? It hardly bodes well for the future of our borough. This situation could have been easily avoided, however. In 2011, the revised BSF plan was called in by the Conservative opposition and our warnings were dismissed. We predicted the impending shortage of secondary and special needs places, but our concerns were ignored. At every budget since 2012, we have made alternative proposals, giving allowance for a fund to explore the need for additional school places, and were ignored at each juncture. Residents also voiced their concerns with this administration's revised PSF programme, as in the 2011 consultation, with 1,635 residents in opposition to the changes and only 25 in favour. Even the expressed concerns of those residents were ignored out of hand. How much longer will this administration continue to bury its head in the sand and pretend its £200 million BSF programme has been anything other than a completely preventable failure to deliver the educational infrastructure that our young people desperately need in order to build the prosperity of the borough in the decades to come. This motion demands a relevant cabinet member to be accountable for failure to deliver sufficient secondary and special needs places, to secure the success of our borough, and to provide to this council at its next meeting a plan showing how it intends to remedy this parlous situation, not just a blind series of platitudes about supposed contingencies, but a detailed, costed strategy showing how it plans to create the additional provision for special needs education alongside the 1,887 secondary places it will need in 5 years' time. I ask for your support, members, for the sake of our young people whose success our borough will depend on in the future.
Second. Yes, I second the motion and reserve my right to speak later. Can I also move the recording vote? You can when we get to the vote, yes. Councillor George Francis.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Being a Conservative, I'm all for aspirational targets. But the one of local places for local children, this document, should have been set in 2011 and not 2017, when the crisis is about to hit the fan. Last week, on Children and Young People Scrutiny, we were asked to endorse the school's organisational plan 2017 to 22. Well, some of us, in all honesty, felt we couldn't endorse it. Part of Lawley is in my ward, and the primary school, which is now an academy, that wasn't when it was built, it was under the LEA control. Someone decided to open it a year at a time. So I had distraught parents phoning me who moved to Lawley because a new school was part of the package to having a new house, and they can't get their child into school because that year isn't yet operational. One parent has to send her son to Wilmington and a daughter to Dorley and then get to work for 9 a.m. Another parent with 3 children has to send them to 3 different schools. I, as their ward councillor, cannot give them a satisfactory answer. I was told at one meeting that it will sort itself out in a couple of years. Well, that's a little comfort to the parents of today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Education, education, education. The party opposite's former leader was right. It is all about education. Potential, dispelling ignorance, preparation for life, work, prosperity and health. Parents across this borough take the education of their young very seriously. They also take rights of freedom and choice for granted too. These rights are at grave risk. The right of opportunity, of fair banding, resisted by this council. Class size chaos in overfull cohorts. Disruption of parental and pupil choice, potentially through place allocation by random ballot, and forcing parents and families to make catchment area Russian roulette. Yet this administration seems completely ready to run these risks of ruining the trust of parents and the schooling of a generation with not enough school places. Newport gives stark evidence. This report, states that the Newport primary catchment area with no children is full. By next year, full automatically means teaming and labelling children between schools, splitting families, forcing children living inside of the church tower to schlep to school in Tiverton. That's a real example of one of my constituents. In the local plan period, new Newport houses built and inbuilt at a rate of 30 houses per year per development stand today at 671. This gives 187 additional primary and 108 additional secondary pupils, more or less right now. That's using the calculation in this report. A further 725 homes are already passed in outline or have broken ground, including, for instance, New Place. Giving over the next 5 to 10 years, say, a further 203 primary pupils and 116 secondary. These figures are from new residents, they are incremental. But the Borough School currently has 1,068 pupils and a capacity for 1,230, and that's from their own website, or 162 spare places. By sacrificing the sixth form, this capacity is clearly all spoken for and more, far more. Muxton children are already barred from next year. When the crisis hits Newport parents and children, what next? Busing children out of Newport? Chosen how? To which good school with free places? No sixth form at Borough School already forces 16-year-olds to 4 buses a day, as my daughter, if they go to college in Telford. Mr. Speaker, our education is our civilization. Telford is a new town and a new society. The young are this society's future. There is a disaster in the making. Call this administration to wake up and pass. Support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Overton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This motion is at best misguided, but at worst just playing polite politics. We all know how this Labour administration dealt with the cutting funding for the BSF programme from the Conservative government. We secured the best outcomes for our children in building 8 new schools and supporting the communities they reside in with excellent facilities, unlike the botched proposals of the party opposite, who were prepared to let some of our communities down on previous committed promises. Since 2011 to present, this council has negotiated over £25.5 million in development contributions to education. Of this, nearly £4.5 million is for secondary education. This council will always, I just said £4.5 million is for secondary education, thank you. This council will always make sure that every new development is reviewed on the impacts locally to school places, and where appropriate will request funding for secondary school provision to mitigate these factors. The way the opposition talked, there were no houses built between 2007 and 2011 when they were in charge, and when they negotiated 0 for secondary school places. Therefore, this motion can easily be defeated because it is factually incorrect, Mr. Speaker. I really do believe that instead of playing party politics, they were better placed lobbying their Conservative government and their 2 Tory MPs to protect our education and our hospital services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I cannot support this motion, and I urge fellow councillors to reject it. To support the motion, in effect, is a vote in support of reckless behaviour, and it's not recklessness on the part of this administration. We take our obligation to invest in education as part of our wider strategy of investment in infrastructure extremely seriously. We ensure that we've got a determination to make Telford the best place it can be to live, work, do business and learn. And that's matched with a financial commitment to invest in our schools, our roads, our footways, our connectivity, our communities. And we do that. And we make sure that we have a quality transport, social and environmental infrastructure to support our year-on-year growth of the borough. The recklessness here is on the part of the Conservative opposition. They're gaslighting again. They're Tories who think the responsible thing to do is to run to the media and put motions to this council based on blatant mistruth and then parade them as if they were the truth. They recklessly suggest that we would somehow not fulfil our legal obligation to provide school places for every child in our borough. They recklessly try and make out that we're somehow not claiming what we should from developers for investing in education when we've done so to the tune of millions. And in the motion, they recklessly continue to make false statements about the finances of this council. Borrowing has not quadrupled. At the year end, it stood at 220 million. This compares to 130 million when you left office and a further 35 million you committed to spend in 2011. And then you start to work out how you pay for stabilisation of the gorge, the renewal of street lighting, the maintenance of operating systems. And then let's not forget your opposition to the profit-generating new place, solar farm and our growth funding, which, if we follow the scrapping of those through, would blow a further 3 million per annum hole in the council budget. Now, for context, relating to education, that's the equivalent, and the single year's income from those schemes is equivalent to the cost of building 10 new classrooms. So just as their alternative budget was on shaky foundations, so are their arguments on the big issues facing our town, this being the latest example. Mr. Speaker, I support this administration in its efforts in the most difficult of circumstances to build a vision for our town, including great educational facilities and educational opportunities for all of our young people. I won't support this motion put by a reckless opposition group whose vision extends no further than their next attempt at a headline found on half-baked nonsense. Recklessness cannot win this debate.
Let's get back to education then, shall we? Yeah. Deny the shortage of places. Mr. Speaker, in this era of the Labour Party lurching to the extreme left and embracing the financial policies, this has led Venezuela into an economic collapse. It's sad to see that the electorally successful Blair mantra, education, 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 has been ditched by the Labour administration. Time and again we've heard that they are proud of what they've achieved. The question to ask Mr. Speaker is proud of what? The last Conservative administration secured the funding for the Building Schools for the Future initiative. Excellent facilities. I have here a copy of the original proposals dated January 2007, in which there are 13 secondary schools. Today, Mr. Speaker, there are only 12. The Council's own figures indicate that by this time next year, the borough will be short of 200 secondary school places, rising to almost 2,000 in just 5 years' time. You can't build a school in performance. Indeed, the situation can be even worse than that if the pressures of new developments outside the borough reduce the number of places for Telford and Wrekin children, places like Hidsall and William Brooks. As with the hospital reconfiguration, this is another example of this administration being in denial of the facts, despite I, my colleagues and others' best attempts to highlight the issue over the last 6 years. The solution, we are told, is that brand new schools have the capacity to be extended. Well, you're now to pull your finger out, where will the money come from? Over the last 6 years on the planning committee, I know that only a fraction of the money needed has been secured from developers, building the thousands of homes that have been approved. So, Mr. Speaker, we're now on the verge of a perfect storm. We warned this administration back several years ago. Not enough secondary school places, which their own figures say. Less than a year from now. No money to provide the required places, although I suppose we'll just borrow that. Parents having to accept their second and third choice schools. Brothers and sisters attending different schools. Transport issues as parents are crisscrossing the borough due to poor transport provision. And people having to work out where they're going to work, or if they can get to work, if they're going to be dropping children here, there and everywhere. Not much to be proud of, is there? So, Mr. Speaker, with a bit of thought and forward planning, this crisis could have been averted. There is really only 5 months to have a proposed solution, as the notification of secondary school places are sent out on the 1st of March. The lack of action over the last 6 years does not bode well, and a rushed and cobbled together plan will not deliver the quality of education our children deserve and should expect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This administration has not let people down. What would have let them down would be to continue with the sticking plaster plan that we inherited in 2011. Fortunately, we have the foresight to change these plans and provide secondary education facilities in the borough fit for the 21st century. I'd like to ask Councillor Burrell to ask the parents at Grange Park Juniors and Park School if they feel let down by this administration. Schools you had no plans to rebuild. We need to remind ourselves that the Labour government's building schools for the future was slashed by the Tory government. Grange Park Juniors were insurmountable. It's now a brand new school. We provide for every child across the borough, not just a select few. Your scaremongering and fake headlines about running out of places, secondary places, and you've got regards demanding for an urgent and detailed report, well, here it is. You are well aware it's already been to a cross-party scrutiny meeting. We have in excess of 1,330 school places available across the borough. We have refurbished or rebuilt every secondary school, providing excellent facilities for children. Whilst working on our BSF programme, you know we can only work on figures up to 2018. We have ensured that every BSF school has the future capacity, and all of these can be extended. And discussions are already taking place with other schools to increase their capacity if needed. We have saved 1,200 places of our plans. Under the opposition's plan, 2 schools would have already closed this year, so we've had 12,000 less places, not the 1,330 surface. Despite this motion being a shambles built on mistruths and scaremongering, there is one thing I can agree with. We did have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, provided by a Labour government and cut by a Tory one. I won't apologise for the fantastic achievements of this administration. I'm sure this sentiment is echoed by thousands of students who now have opportunity to learn within first-class secondary schools across Telford and Wrekin. You are aware we have a statutory duty to provide school places. There will never be a time when we suddenly look round and go, whoops, we haven't got any places left. Of course we've got plans in place to provide extra places. This motion is built on nothing but a farce to scare parents and grab the headlines in the press. We have anticipated and planned for the increased demand as part of the school organisation planning. We work with secondary schools to ensure to continue to provide local places for local children. It would be great if the opposition, instead of attacking and downplaying our fantastic schools and hard-working teachers, joined with us to celebrate the fantastic successes we've had with our recent GCSE results and our 98% good or better primary schools. Everybody recognises this is dirty politics. It's time to stop using education as a political football and ensure all schools get the funding they require from central government. If the opposition is really so concerned about school places and funding, the answer lies in their hands, to lobby their government. Unlike some members, I don't come to this chamber with cheap shots and false headlines. I work in education day in and day out. And like all teachers, I am very passionate about ensuring the best education for all young people in this borough. I call on all members to see this motion for what it really is and vote down this silly scaremongering by the opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, I don't normally take part in the politics of full councils. I'm not one for making big speeches, etc. But this is an example of where an extremely important issue for the people of Telford is being used as so elegantly put just as a political football. Conservative Party members that were on my scrutiny panel board had the local places for local children plan come before us. And at no point in the very detailed report that was given to us did they raise the concerns that they're raising tonight.
Not one question did I receive.
Which is very, very, very disappointing. And in my last meeting as well, I also reached out the point if they had any detailed concerns about any schools in our borough. I asked them to put them to me so I could put them to the cabinet member. Not one question has come forward from those schools members. So it is quite clear, Mr. Speaker, that they are using this issue, they are using the local press for scoring points to get votes on a very, very serious issue, and it is disgusting, Mr. Speaker. If they have a real issue, they should bring it to scrutiny where it can be scrutinised, and we can take it where it's the real job of scrutiny, which is to hand it back to the cabinet member, okay, in detail, and say this is a problem, and we will answer it. But at no point have you gone through the real process. You're just using this as a political football. It's disgusting, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hearing about this motion tonight and reading it through, it very much reminded me of the lessons I've actually taught this week in my own classroom about storytelling. As many of you will know that 5- and 6-year-olds do really love myths and fairy tales, and it seems this passion is shared by my colleagues across the floor. However, I have to add that the 5-year-olds which I have the pleasure of teaching
seem to be able to they also seem to be much better at maths as well. So we have 1,300 places available, and Councillor Brown usefully highlighted the 1,100 needed in 5 years' time. So that's year 3 maths right there, and they can tell me that there is enough places available in Telford and Wrekin. So I call upon everybody in this chamber to vote this ridiculous motion down and recognise it exactly for what it is, and that's scaremongering tactics by a washed-up opposition trying to bolster their own position by trading off the emotions of naturally anxious parents and they apply for primary and secondary school places for their children. Such base party politics to affect the reputation of our excellent educational offer in Telford and Wrekin. Whilst I was Cabinet Member for Education, I had the pleasure of meeting many students, teachers and parents from right across the borough, and it was those conversations which inspired me to become a teacher so that I could make the difference to my community, and I wish that that same ethos was shared from those across the floor. Vote this fairy tale down and show that we're proud of our local young people, what they achieved in our borough, and the fantastic educational establishments we're so lucky to have within Telford and Wrekin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the proposer can definitely be called consistent on this issue. Consistently wrong. He was proven wrong when he called the plans to scrutiny, and by the way, that was a political action and it was jeopardising the whole of the BSF project then, and again now you're doing the same kind of politics. I'm so disappointed with this motion. It's clearly another attempt for the party opposite to raise fears within our community that shouldn't be there. The proposer was the architect of a plan that stuck a sticking plaster over the issues of a well-worn secondary education estate. When we came into power in 2011, it was abundantly clear that the Tory plan would not and could not meet the needs of the borough for the future. No amount of flannel from across the floor in this chamber will change the real facts. If their plans went ahead as they were, and you've heard it from Councillor Reynolds, 2 secondary schools in Telford would have closed because they would have been unsustainable. Thanks to the incredible amount of work the officers did to ensure that rather than a meagre programme the opposition were proposing, we now have, and count them, every secondary school bar one fully rebuilt and one that had a multi-million-pound refurbishment. Councillor Burrell should ask all those families who are now sending their children to the brand new schools and the 400 or so children who under a Tory administration were being educated in demandable temporary buildings with no plans for their future, what they think. These children are now being educated in a brand new primary school. They certainly don't see the BSF programme as a debacle that the motion mentions. In terms of numbers, the Cabinet Member for Education and Skills has already stated that, as usual for the party opposite, they have not exactly been honest, have they? They know that the wonderful Labour government BSF programme had to be based on numbers for 2018 and no further forward. Indeed, we also know that the disastrous plans they had would have probably lost 1,200 places this year. I'm proud that one of those schools, things have been turned around so much that in the last 2 years, their Year 7 has been oversubscribed. Luckily, we have the 1,300 or so places that our building schools for the future plans have ensured. This motion should be seen for what it is, a petty, poorly written party political attempt to raise concerns that should not be there for our families. I would ask the opposition to withdraw the motion, and if they don't, then I ask all members to forget party politics and vote against this nonsensical motion.
Councillor Lee, do you wish to use your rights to speak? I don't think yes, please. You have 3 minutes. Start down.
Run on from there. Run, Andrew, run.
Well, it's nice to have a bit of levity about the place. It's what I've listened to, particularly rather angry. This council has just finished spending £200 million of government funding on providing new secondary schools, and yet finds itself amongst the top few councils in the country
who failed to plan and provide enough secondary places to deal with population growth. A problem due to the council's own failure to produce a local plan which has resulted in uncontrolled development right across the borough. This failure is of monumental proportions and bears the hallmark of a Labour administration who will not listen or learn from other voices. What makes this worse is that we're running out of special needs places for the most vulnerable pupils in the borough, a situation which the appropriate cabinet member should be rightly ashamed. And yet that same cabinet member turned his back on £10 million to build an urban technology college in Telford and expressed his pride in the outcome of this failed school building problem. Outrageous. Twice we brought motions calling on this council to introduce the community infrastructure levy so that cash could be collected from developers to provide secondary school education. Twice this Labour administration rejected our call, and not a thing has been collected for secondary schools, leaving developers to walk away scot-free and borough taxpayers to pick up a multi-million-pound school bill. We warned the administration that their school building programme was seriously flawed, as Scooby called it, as has been said during 2011, and correctly predicted that this authority would run out of pupil places by 2019. We also explicitly warned its successive alternative budget proposals that disaster was looming, and allocated £500,000 in 2015 to urgently identify and plan for new secondary school places. Again, this clear warning was simply ignored. Although the previous Labour cabinet member for education has since been removed from that portfolio, and a good thing too, his successor was the chairman of the scrutiny committee, who did also fail to understand our budget proposals and our budget warnings. We now arrive at the point of how this council is going to get us out of this self-inflicted mess. Spare secondary places at Shifnall's Insel School are drying up and have disappeared, and there is no proposed new free school on the horizon. All that is left for this administration is to beg for funds or increase council borrowing at a time that this Labour administration has quadrupled council borrowing and quadrupled council debt. In short, this Labour administration has run out of time to avert what is an education crisis. It has failed our community, our council taxpayers, our parents, and more importantly, it's failed our children in Telford and Wrekin, including vulnerable children, all of whom deserve much better than what they get. Let me assure everybody that the next Conservative administration will deal with this crisis. I will, Speaker. As a major priority, what's more, it will have inquiries to understand why these school projections were deliberately withheld from my group. We need to understand the status of the failures and make sure that this debacle never happens again.
Take it, Tommy.
I noted Councillor Reynolds' comments regarding the great degree of crime that the Wrekin have in Telford Park School, and I was wondering if she may be aware that in the admissions forum meeting held in November 2016, it was revealed that there were only 112 first, second, and third choice preferences at Telford Park School against 175 for William Brooks. Residents are voting with their feet and are not choosing Telford Park School. Oh, and these imaginary numbers you accuse me of using what is a heads up. They're your numbers, they're not mine. This is all based on publications that have been published by this administration. They're not a simple one of my figures there. They're all yours. So congratulations on not even knowing your own numbers. And I'll take no lessons from Councillor Watling, who in addition to being the chief architect of his failure to provide sufficient secondary special needs places, was also a founding member of the Telford Cooperative Multi-Academy Trust. from which he jumped ship just months before it collapsed in 2014. Inactive and 3 of them being placed in special measures by Ofsted is hardly a shining example for anyone. It must be recognised that the current projected shortfall in secondary special needs provision is based in part on the Council's housing needs technical paper published in June 2016, and therefore takes no account of the probability that housing numbers within the emerging local plan will be revised upwards as it progresses to the conclusion of its procedure of inspection. According to the Council's own model, each 1,000 new homes give rise to the demand for approximately 250 primary and 180 secondary school places, in addition to the current projected shortfall of 458 primary places and 1,887 secondary places. The Council itself forecasts by 2022. Despite this, the administration still insists that we do not have a crisis in planning for school places. Shambolic. I remind members that this council, each one of its members, has a statutory duty to provide sufficient primary and secondary school places to meet demand with a 5% surplus. Papers published by this administration, these very papers, state very clearly, in the clearest possible terms, that they will fail to meet the statutory duty only 12 months from today, while offering us no clear plan or strategy for how it intends to build not just sufficient capacity for secondary and special needs, but indeed any additional capacity whatsoever beyond that yielded as a result of removing the much needed non-selective post-scheme provisioning viewport. So, this motion seeks not to force the administration to admit it has underprovided schools in the borough. It has done all that by itself within its school organisation plan 2017 to 22. But given the statutory duty we all have in regard to this ban, the council needs to produce a report. Council very clear how it intends to, where it intends to, when it intends to, and how it intends to pay for the future education provision so desperately needed for this borough. And I really move
Then move to the vote. You're all saying, okay, before you vote.
Councillor Ashford.
For.
Councillor Barnes.
For.
Councillor Bentley.
For.
Councillor Blundell. Councillor Boyden.
For.
Councillor Burford.
Against.
Councillor Burrell.
For.
Councillor Eric Carter.
For.
Councillor Lee Carter.
Against.
Councillor Cook.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dugmore.
For.
Councillor Reid.
For.
Councillor Arnold England.
Against.
Councillor Nathan England.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Ian Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Francis.
For.
Councillor Furnivall.
Abstain.
Councillor Greenaway.
For.
Councillor Guy.
Against.
Councillor Hoskin.
For.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Keenan.
For.
Councillor Lawrence.
For.
Councillor Loveridge.
Against.
Councillor Lowry.
For.
Councillor Mason.
Against.
Councillor Angela Clements.
Against.
Councillor Meta.
Against.
Councillor Meredith.
Against.
Councillor Minor.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
Against.
Councillor Nelson.
For.
Councillor Overton.
Against.
Councillor Pinton.
Against.
Councillor G Reynolds.
Against.
Councillor Shirley Reynolds.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Reynolds.
Against.
Councillor Rhodes.
Against.
Councillor Sakota.
Against.
Councillor Scott.
Against.
Councillor Seymour.
For.
Councillor Charles Smith.
Against.
Councillor Malcolm Smith.
Against.
Councillor Tillotson. Councillor Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Turley.
Against.
Councillor Watling.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Motion fails.
Vote time.
Okay. So the final motion, to move by Councillor Bentley, but I have some problem with this motion. Because he calls on the speaker, which I've no problem with that, like, sorry, regard to the council, the Home Secretary and the Rudd and Lord Chancellor. Well, and the Rudd of the Home Secretary, it's nothing to do with what the issue. It's all to do with the Lord Chancellor. So it needs to be properly and legally correct whenever you write to. Now I'd ask Stephen Bentley to delete the words Home Secretary and the Rudd as an amendment, because it causes problems. And if I'm going to write the letter, I need to write to the right people.
Well, thank you for your response there, Mr. Speaker, before I go. This has been brought to my attention on a couple of occasions, and I fundamentally disagree. I do not believe it is the Lord Chancellor he may review sentences, but I don't think he can repeal them and everything else. I'm pretty certain that's still the Home Secretary, unless you can demonstrate a change in the statutory duties of the Home Secretary to me tonight.
I think you would need to look at what you've got there.
Well, I checked this out, Charles.
I checked as well.
Who you checked it with?
The lawyers. And it says Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice.
Right,
that's what it's about.
All you've got to do then, Charles, is write one letter and send it up twice.
On behalf of this council, I'm worried that this council doesn't look properly in the eyes of who we write it to. And the letter would actually should go to the Lord Chancellor, the Minister for Justice, because things altered over the past few years. So I do have problems with that.
Like I say, I still believe that that advice isn't correct. However, Charles, you write it, and then I'll see what it says. How does that grab you?
No, Stephen, if I write a letter, it goes strongly worded letter, needs to be to the right people, and it needs to be properly worded to the right person. And that right person is the Lord Chancellor, the Minister for Justice.
So do you think that what you're saying to me, Charles, is the Lord Chancellor can intervene on the release of prisoners?
Well,
he used to be the one that did it.
Point of order from Councillor.
I'm just trying to be helpful so we get on with business. So that's some business here. Why can't we debate the motion and then clarify who the letter has to go to either? It's obviously either or, we can do.
It's a word in the motion.
It's the word in the motion, Andrew, because I don't envisage any opposition to this motion at all. Steve, move the motion and give some thought to what you just said.
Right, I'll do that then, Charles. I will move the motion and then I'll give some thought. So, Mr. Speaker and members, it would be foolish of me to deny recent reports, headlines and Shropshire staff, coupled with the actions of Telford MP Lucy Allen, do not have a direct influence on the table of this motion tonight. Child abuse, as we know through reports, has been going on for decades, if not centuries, and has involved institutions and high-profile members of society. For their own gratification, and it is right, when exposed and convicted, the reality of any sentence imposed should be implemented in full. Child trafficking is not isolated to our borough alone. It is committed nationwide by, it would appear, individuals or gangs, not only for their own gratification, but for the gratification of others with rewards for themselves. Their victims, some I believe as young as 11, as reported, are from some of the most vulnerable sections of our community. These victims are preyed upon, enticed into abnormal friendships, bought with innocuous gifts and money, and then exposed into a world of vile debauchery and drugs. This, without doubt, results in scarring them mentally for life, whilst also stealing from them their innocence and childhood. What the newspaper reports did for me, as I hope it did for each of you, was questions to whether or not we, as a body, have done enough to support these victims and their families. And when I say we as a body, I'm talking about members. Following meetings with colleagues, Councillors Andrew Reid, Sean Davis, Paul Wrekin, and senior officers, it became very clear, I believe, that despite the extensive support mechanism now in place for our own victims, which I welcome, the motion fully supported by this elected body will provide confidence to the victims and their families that their bravery in exposing these perpetrators, consequently leading to convictions, was not futile. Likewise, the intention of this motion is to provide confidence to anyone embroiled in similar circumstances, not just locally, but throughout the nation, that they have the right to be heard and supported and defended without fear of repercussions or intimidation. Members, I believe that in writing to the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, and the Secretary of State for Justice, David Lidington, we, in the strongest possible manner, using the strongest possible tones, we, on behalf of these victims, not only oppose the early release of any individual convicted of offences connected to child trafficking, but they in turn insist that these sentences is served in full without any reconsideration of remission.
Councillor Watley to second.
Thank you. It's very rare that I agree with Councillor Bentley. This is one, because of the seriousness of the nature of the motion, that we can all agree on. We on this side of the chamber fully support this motion. Crimes that are referred to are particularly heinous and have a huge impact on local communities that have to work together long and hard to repair the damage caused by this behaviour and ensure that it's stamped out forever. I understand and support the importance of rehabilitation of offenders, but this has to be balanced against the rights of all communities who, as I have said, need to be encouraged to remain vigilant and fully engaged in standing up to the perpetrators of these crimes. Communities have to have confidence that the deterrent effect of long sentences for anyone engaged in these despicable crimes is there. I know that the Lord Chancellor and the Secretary of State for Justice are already considering the issue. Nevertheless, I think we as a council should be writing to him to make sure that he is aware of the strength of feeling about this across all our communities.
Anybody against the motion? Do we need to debate what's further? I think we're unanimous on that. Yeah. But can I suggest an amendment to the Home Secretary and the Lord Chancellor, just all those words, and put in just to the government, and then goes to all the departments, regardless.
I can live with that.
Can we agree with the amendment? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Can we agree the motion then? Yeah. Show of hands then, please. Can we unanimously? So we close the meeting. Thank you for attending. Thank you.